It's 8:34. Look, this is undoubtedly a good idea. Anything that helps integration is to be applauded. But I don't quite see how they're going to do it. Schools should teach integration as part of the curriculum. This will halt the spread of racism and extremism. So says Dame Louise Casey, who was appointed by David Cameron to lead a study, is to call for schools to include lessons on character and resilience and integration on their timetables. Her review is also expected to recommend that pupils in faith schools should be forced to mix with other religious groups to prevent segregation. Dame Louise also warned against removing a cap on the number of religious pupils faith schools are allowed to admit. It follows Theresa May's decision to abolish the 50% cap for new faith schools earlier this month. She also called for schools to celebrate Christmas, Eid and other traditions to break down barriers within communities, and warned that how the school curriculum is drawn up is essential to tackling segregation. Why would you have a school that didn't celebrate Christmas? The last time I looked, this is a Christian country, or maybe something's happened while I haven't been watching. But, of course, integration makes sense. Absolutely. But I pose this again. Right, children, shush. Let's start this lesson. I'm your teacher. My name's Mr. Ferrari, and I'm going to teach you integration. What am I going to say next? How do you do it? Well, let's speak with Lorrae Jaderberg, who's former deputy head teacher, co-managing director of JK Educate. It's an educational consultancy, who joins me now. Undoubtedly well motivated, but how practical? Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. Well, it's very practical. We can actually get right down to it and start with all sorts of ways of doing it through workshops, visits, partnerships, exposure to different groups.
Talk me through a workshop.
So a workshop might be taking a key subject that's very challenging for integration, and then the children would work through the ideas, they would play different roles, and they would look at different scenarios and outcomes. You could also have examples of success to show them beforehand or afterwards.
Okay.
So there's plenty of creative
Let's use the burqa. How are we going to workshop the issue of the burqa?
Well, it could be about people's feelings and threats and fears. So looking at, in safety, what that means to different people when they see it, what their reactions are, and being able to explore ideas openly in a safe and trusted environment. So it's about acknowledging feelings and then working through them to understand, well, what is that all about? What does it mean to different people? Why is it important?
And when a child says, my mum and dad hate them, and they say they're all terrorists, what do you say to that child?
Well, first of all, you have to acknowledge the fact that people are really fearful of that situation, and then go on to talk about why people do it, why it's important, and what real threat does it pose to people. And I think having examples where other parents come into school and other faith leaders come into school and explain and talk about what they do and why they do it, I think is very helpful for children.
What age would you bring this in?
I think you could start quite young, actually, certainly in primary schools at the moment. A lot of this work is already being done. Granted, not quite to the extent that we're talking about now, but it is already happening. Children do go on visits to all different places of worship. It's part of the national curriculum as it stands. But I think one could go further and be more creative with it and have more support. But it does mean training teachers as well and providing that expertise into schools.
I appreciate you supporting this idea, because it's important to remind my listeners it's not actually your idea, but you're very kindly sort of speaking about the whole notion behind it. Another suggestion is teaching character and resilience. How do you teach resilience?
Well, it's about putting people in situations and then looking at alternatives. What do you do in that situation? What might happen? And I think it's really important, because resilience is one of the most important things for children, to be able to find within themselves and strategies in order to combat situations that they find themselves in, instead of lashing out, finding alternative ways of dealing with it. So you would put people in situations, both theoretically and then practically.
And lastly, what's going to give then? What are we going to take off the timetable to make room for all these extra classes, all these additional classes?
Well, it could go within the PHSE curriculum. So I think there's already time within a school day to do that, actually. It can be integrated into drama, into English. It can be
Are you not seriously suggesting we teach resilience instead of English, are you?
It depends. If you're doing a very interesting piece of text, which is about somebody who showed resilience,
The world's gone mad. Instead of English, we're going to teach resilience or character.
We already do it. We already do it in schools. It's all part of the national curriculum. Yes, they integrate it into the whole curriculum. And children find it more interesting that way, Nick. They don't want to just look at one subject on its own. If it's introduced through the curriculum, through interesting text and exciting stories...
They should be sat at their desks with their backs straight, with their hands on the desk, paying full attention, otherwise smacked on the back of their legs with a ruler.
Oh, the old days, Nick, the old days. Lovely.
Didn't do me any harm.
I'm sure it didn't.
I think, yes, I'm being told by my team, damn well did. All right, Lorrae Jaderberg, thank you, former Deputy Head Teacher and Co-Managing Director of JK Educate.